You know, I will never forget my first day in San Francisco. It was the first Sunday in October 1986, and my first experience of the city was a little thing called Castro Street Fair, founded by Harvey Milk. Today it's celebrating, this week I should say, it's celebrating its 40th anniversary, and we're speaking with its executive director, George Ridgely. George, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, we were joking before the show started that if you come to San Francisco and Castro Street Fair for the first time in October, you're fooled. You think the weather is always this good.
Exactly. Exactly. If you come in the spring or you come in the summer, you're like, what happened? I thought it was summer.
Yeah, I mean, I came in 1986, and I remember the Saturday before, the night before, was the 50th anniversary of the Bay Bridge. They lit it up. It's like, wow, they're doing all this to welcome me to town. The next day was Castro Street Fair, and I thought, any city that can do this, boy, I got to live there, and that was it for me.
My experience was similar. Like moving to the city, I would go to all the street festivals every year, but Castro Street Fair was always my favorite. I moved here in '96 and had the opportunity to volunteer for the fair in 2003, and by 2004 I was on the board and helping with the production.
A slippery slope.
Yes.
So you've been the executive director for 9 years now, almost 10.
Yes.
And the fair, for those who are uninitiated, it's always the first Sunday in October. So this year it's Sunday,
October 6th.
From when to when?
From 11 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Now, a lot of people know it's a fun party. I mean, when I came that first day 27 years ago, I thought, what an incredible neighborhood fair. It's kind of gay, but it's really not. It's a little bit of everything.
Right.
But I didn't realize it has an incredible history. It was founded by Harvey Milk.
It was. It was founded by Harvey Milk in 1974. The story is he was really looking to draw attention to the neighborhood and draw attention to the merchants that were in the neighborhood, and kind of create a fair that was about the neighborhood and about the people who lived there and about the merchants who were there. It's obviously grown since that time. There's some footage on our website right now of Harvey at the 1976 fair talking about why he started it. There's some great historical footage on our history page as well.
Now, a lot of people feel that the Castro Street Fair is kind of I don't know if 40 is worthy of being a granddaddy, but the granddaddy of all the street fairs in San Francisco. Is it the oldest?
I believe of its type. I mean, obviously, like the Italian Heritage Fair in North Beach is older than ours, but and that is a street fair.
But certainly the plethora of fairs that now happen. I mean, San Francisco, September, October is kind of street fair season.
Right.
I mean, there wouldn't be a Folsom, there wouldn't be a Haight Street, there wouldn't be a Union Street Fair without Castro Street Fair.
Right. Right. So Folsom, I think, started 10 years after we did. Haight Street Fair started a few years after we did, and I was sharing with you a little bit of that story.
Yeah, there's an interesting story about how Haight Street Fair was the child of Castro Street Fair.
Yeah. So Pablo Heising was the founder of the Haight Street Fair, and I worked with Pablo closely my first few years. Pablo is no longer with us, unfortunately. But Harvey had started the fair in 1974, and Pablo had wanted to do something similar in the Haight, so he went to Harvey and said, do you mind if I just follow you around and see how you do this? And Harvey said, sure. Pablo did that for a few years, started the Haight Street Fair, and then took on the helm of the Castro Street Fair for about 30 years.
So he was the guy that was in charge when I got here in '86?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
He was the guy who was in charge when I started, and I got to work hand in hand with him. So that sort of 1 degree of separation from Harvey Milk and the inception of the fair is, I constantly remind myself of how lucky I am.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's nice doing feel-good stories, and maybe it is because I have this sentimental attachment to Castro Street Fair. I mean, for me, it's my anniversary. I go every year. I have clients there. I have friends there, a lot of wonderful nonprofits, and I've seen it over 27 years take on a different tone. I mean, when I got here in '86, we didn't realize that AIDS was already here, you know, beneath the surface. And we saw the fair become more and more political, and then it went through kind of a sad period, and then we went through a couple of recessions. Where are we now? What is the character of Castro Street Fair in 2013?
I mean, that's a great question, and I think it's even different than it was 10 years ago when I started. And I think there's been a lot of continuity with the fair, and I think part of that, again, would go back to Pablo being involved for 30 years. I don't know if you're familiar with Jane Warner. She was,
of course, the San Francisco, late San Francisco police officer, openly lesbian, for whom the square in Castro was named.
Jane was on our board for more than 10 years. She was on the board when I started. Our business manager has been involved probably as long, like she probably started around the same time you did. And her name is Sue Espinoza. I've been working with her for years. So that continuity, I think, does bring us back to the core of what started the fair. But at the end of the day, and I'm gonna quote Pablo again, like it's a fundraiser. It is politically significant. It is a way to raise money for local nonprofits, but at the end of the day, it's also just an opportunity for our neighborhood to get together and dance in the streets.
Yeah.
And I think that has remained.
Now, there's a lot of dancing in the streets, but I've noticed over the last few years, the number of streets we're dancing in has gotten smaller. Is that because of economics?
No. In fact, we haven't changed our footprint. We haven't changed our footprint in a decade. I can't speak to prior to that, but I don't know if that's just smaller crowds at the dance stages, or
No. Well, I guess the question I'm going for is, you know, running any large organization like this and large street fair, I mean, you're also involved in Beta Breakers. You know what it's like doing big events in San Francisco. What have been some of the challenges of the recession over the last few years?
It's probably getting a commitment from, I mean, we underwrite the fair. The cost of the fair is 99% underwritten by the exhibitors who come and by the sponsors who sponsor the fair. So the gate donations are going right back to the community.
Right. And it's a voluntary contribution, correct?
Yes,
when people come through.
Exactly. So it's a free event. We ask for $5 to $10 at the gate. Again, we turn that right back around, and all those organizations who are there are really counting on that money. So the challenge for us is getting commitment up front from exhibitors or sponsors to participate. And that's the biggest hit with the recession, I think, is that commitment comes later and later, because people are tighter with what funds they're going to spend.
Right. Now talk a little bit about some of the beneficiaries. I mean, who is going to be getting some of this money that goes into the gate and then goes right back into the community?
Well, there's about 30 organizations this year, and that's pretty typical for us. They are across the board. They are aid service organizations. They're local schools like Harvey Milk Civil Rights Academy, the Haight-Ashbury Nursery School. There are some local nonprofit community groups like the Castro Eureka Valley Neighborhood Association. There's Queer Life Space. It kind of is across the board. The Bad Boys of San Francisco baseball team or softball team is one of our beneficiaries.
And so these groups depend upon this money coming every year.
They do.
I mean, typically, I mean, in round numbers, I mean, how much can you raise from the Castro Street Fair? How much does it raise?
I would say, and again, I can give you the past decade, we have been giving back somewhere between $70,000 and $75,000 every year to those organizations. Part of the other thing we do is we fund the rainbow flag that flies in the Castro. So MUMSI actually is responsible for maintaining it. We buy the actual flags.
Right. Now, in your 9 years, what are some of the highlights? Are there any fairs that really stick out for you as being significant? I mean, because the Castro Street Fair, it's a fun excuse to dance in the streets, but there is a political edge to it.
There is, but it's entertainment for me, honestly. Like, I remember the year that the Tubes decided that they were going to play. That was one of my first years being involved. And this year, having Peaches on the main stage is like...
Peaches Christ.
Not Peaches Christ. Peaches, she's an international, like, electronic performance artist.
I'm clearly not hip enough to know this. I just dated myself. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We're in San Francisco. I can understand why you'd say Peaches Christ.
I know. Exactly. But now there's been some other, stars that have, or people who've become stars that started on the Castro Street stage. I mean, didn't Lady Gaga perform here before she became huge?
I don't know that she performed our fair. I know she performed Pride.
Pride, that's it.
Yeah.
But I mean, there were some other people.
Well, Sylvester got his start on the Castro Street Fair stage. And in fact, part of Peaches' set this year is going to be a tribute to Sylvester. There will be a little mini set of songs, and we've got a whole thing choreographed with that as well. I'm really looking forward to her set this year.
Yeah. Now, we've got to, as we are debuting this on Monday, it's a week before Castro Street Fair. If someone still wants to exhibit or, find a way to participate, is there still time?
Sure. So we're still taking exhibitor applications. We've stopped mailing out packets, so if you sign up now, we'll have a permit waiting for you at the gate. If we've got space available on event day, we'll sell. We can sell you a spot on event day.
Yeah.
And we typically do. It's a pretty large footprint, so.
Yeah. What do you think is the best thing about the fair?
For me, it is always, and it goes back to something personal for me, because it's always just been my favorite fair of the season. It typically is kind of towards the end of the season, if not the last one that happens. And it feels like family. The other fairs and celebrations, San Francisco is so international that you go to them and there are people from all over the world. And we certainly have people from all over the world at our event too, but it still feels small town.
Yeah, I remember the first time I had friends come from my hometown of Richmond, Virginia, a young woman with whom I went to school, and her eyes were just wide, and she said, well, is this a gay thing? And I said, well, no, this is just kind of Castro. It's kind of everything. I mean, I agree. It feels, to me, of all the fairs, and I've been to all of them, and they're wonderful, it feels the most neighborhoody. I get a sense that it's the day that people come out of their stores in the Castro, they come out of their homes in the Castro, and say, this is the values of the neighborhood.
Absolutely. I think you nailed it. I think that's what it feels like. That's what we're striving for it to feel like. I don't know if you've been to Barnaby's World of Wonderment within the fair.
Mm-hmm.
It's a block that we have set aside for interactive arts, and it's basically just performance art. It feels like you're stepping back in time. It feels like you're stepping back to the Castro Street Fair of the 1970s.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Summer of Love stuff going on there.
And this year they're actually doing a dunk tank with the Harvey Milk Club, and that again is a flashback to Harvey did a dunk tank at one of the first fairs.
So now who's going to be the dunk tank? And is it a fundraiser for somebody? Do I get to throw David Campos or Scott Wiener or?
You probably can. Yes, yes. I don't know who the lineup is going to be yet, but we're doing it with the Harvey Milk Club.
Yeah.
So.
Who's the longest exhibitor? I mean, is there anyone that has been there for 40 years and has never missed or has been there for most of it?
That's a great question.
Uh-huh.
I don't know the answer to that question.
But any new people, I mean, we all know, and Pride, some other groups in town have taken some criticism for becoming too, quote unquote, corporate.
Right.
I imagine 40 years ago, Harvey Milk probably had a hard time getting a business to sponsor the Castro Street Fair.
Right.
How do you balance that?
That's probably one of the toughest things to do, because corporate sponsors are necessary. Like I said, that's how we underwrite the actual cost of the event, and it's significantly more expensive to produce even than it was 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So we do have corporate sponsors that, like Miller has been a long-time sponsor of the fair and very supportive. U.S. Bank is another sponsor who's been very supportive. Chevron in the past couple of years. But at the same time, we don't want it to feel overly corporate. We want it to feel like a neighborhood event. So it's a fine line of managing those expectations, and managing the funds, and our corporate sponsors are really invested in the fair being successful and being part of the fabric of it.
Well, I mean, I think you've done a good job in the sense that in as much as things in San Francisco can not be political, which is, like probably feeding your cat in San Francisco has a constituency, anything's political, Castro Street Fair seems to have managed to really be a neighborhood fair. In our last few seconds, anything you want to say, any message to the people that haven't come before or that are going to come this year, anything special they're going to see that they haven't seen before?
Well, the
surprises?
The entertainment lineup is magnificent. Like across the board, we've probably got 40 years of music on all the stages. You're going to kind of get a feel of what the Castro Street Fair has been for the past 40 years. If you haven't been before, this is the year to come.
Great. Well, thanks very much.
Thanks.
We've been speaking to George Ridgely about the Castro Street Fair. I'll be celebrating my 27th anniversary in the city there on October 6th. Next up, another anniversary. We're going to talk to the brother and sister team of Howard and Leslie Flax about 75 years of the iconic store here in San Francisco. We'll be right back.